Alright, so we are now on to the second locomotive, which of course is the Bachmann's new generation class 66, which as I said is 66761. Now of course, there is a lot of things that are different about it, which is of course its detailing is a lot better than of course the one we had beforehand, and of course there is of course also some rotating axle boxes, so it means that that a cure scale is not left unchallenged. Now of course the locomotive I've got here is actually one of the which actually fills in the gap with of course the later class 66s, which of course is one of the last ever ones made. So with that said, we will begin. Oh yeah, you may want to look at that. Of course I don't think there's any changes to of course the brief history of the class 66. So of course now we will get train out of the box. Of course it does have some, of course, some new variant of their buffer beams. But of course what is done, it's removed from the bottom, so you don't so it's one thing that a cure scale needs to take note for any future upgrades, is to try and do it where it doesn't need the buffer beam, sorry, not the buffer beam, the top to be taken off the body. So of course this is actually going in from the bottom instead of the top. But of course you get out the screws, and then you of course take off cut the buffer beam, and then of course remove the coupling housing before putting on the new one. But of course it also has the information on it on how it needs to be removed. Of course good thing is of course all of the hook lengths of course are separate from, of course the hook lengths are separate, and of course it's also got the pipework as well and screws with it. So, and it's also got your nameplates, because it doesn't have the nameplates on at the moment, but I need to put on the nameplates, but I'm going to have to be very careful because with the glue, because the glue that I use seems to be stripping the paint off the cure scale locomotives, because I tried it with something that happened to that I found as a flaw on 724. So of course there's the little Drax power station, the little association of the Wensleydale Railway Association. It's very small, not sure if you're going to be able to see that unless it's actually on the move. Of course it will be run without plates first. So there it is, 66761, the Wensleydale Railway Association. Of course it does have the low emission variant grills, but I advise you not to press on them because they can fall out, because the thing is there's nothing right behind them, so it's like more of a harder tight mesh to it. And I'm not sure, is that a bit like a pure scale shape that it shows like some sort of a little bit of gold to it? I'm not sure. And then of course you got, of course, the more realistic steps, whereas the Acura scale ones have straight steps. And of course 66761, of course, is my first ever locomotive to feature these, the new generation LED standard lights, which goes on all low emission variants that were made 2007 into the future. And of course throughout, I think you can see that there's a lot more extra parts that have been added to it. And then of course, last thing to say is that it's in the Europorte branding, so it's a totally new looking thing. So, carefully bringing that down and getting 66709 Sorrento, which of course this was built, and of course it was second hand, as I said, there's only a small level of detail, just enough for it to be actually presentable, whereas with the Acura scale ones the new generation Bachmann one, there is a lot more to it. So with that said, we would bring 761 down. That is so funny because what's being played on the background, this is called Third Attempt with Skylimits the Limit, which, to be fair, it's more or less pretty much of a nod to this, my Freightliner Acura scale class 66414. Because with Freightliner, sky is the limit. Anyways, let's get this onto the tracks and see how well it works. As I said, is that I won't be pressing down on it on the Bachmann stuff, because the thing is that, as I said before, the locomotive, it just got nothing in between the grills because it's absolutely see-through, but the mesh feels quite similar to that of the Acura scale class 66. Already on my railway, it definitely looks the part as that great class 66, but how will it fare against the Acura scale, because it has an all new 5-pole skew wound motor with twin flywheels. Seems quieter. It also seems to have a little bit of issues going around the corners slightly. So yeah, not really that much of this. It's a nice quiet sound to the to train them, which is actually quite good, but as I said, looks like it may have that first little niggly issue for the class 66 already. It is absolutely a fantastic locomotive nevertheless. And I'm sure as it gets a bit more into the twists and turns of my track, the train should work fine. It's good that that it does run quite smoothly, but so far it looks like the Freightliner one wins with the cornering. But it does now mean that GB Railfreight is now dominant. The dominant freight operator on my model railway now. Which for that I'm truly happy with. Of course you can see that the lights are a bit different on this train, is that it's got yellow lights, a yellow light for the outside marker and light, and of course you then have got the two white lights on the inner sides. But I believe that the power is slightly more powerful than my other class 66s. But yeah, I definitely am happy with this class 66 as well, because it actually looks a lot like the real thing. It looks and works quite adequately. But I think the challenge is trying to get these nameplates on. So with that said, that's where it's going to end for a few minutes, so I can start prepping the locomotives for active service. So with that said, they'll have their first demonstration afterwards, starting with the Freightliner 66.